young.
Tyra, you guys need to
We're tired of all your bitching out there.
Hello. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. This is Tyra here, and welcome to episode 10 of Kombucha Hour. I am literally so surprised that I have made 10 episodes. I just usually used my podcast as a way just to kind of vent about how I was feeling. And it's crazy that so many of you guys have resonated with my podcast and said that my podcast was your most listened to podcast of 2020. That was absolutely crazy. So thank you for all the support and love. Today, I'm going to have my very, very first guest on my podcast, one of my very good friends, Jenna. We're going to be discussing Jewish vegans and the Holocaust comparisons that have been coming up in the mainstream vegan world. But before we get into that, I just wanted to get into the kombucha of the episode. The kombucha of the episode I found at grocery outlet. If you guys do not have a grocery outlet near you, that is very sad. But if you do have a grocery outlet, I definitely recommend checking it out. They always have really cheap vegan meat alternatives, cheeses, different kinds of things. And another thing that they always have is different kinds of kombucha for me to test out and review. So the kombucha of the episode today is the Better Booch kombucha. It is Cherry Retreat is the name of the kombucha, and the accents are cherry, vanilla, and Bearmont. I'm definitely probably not saying that right. This is an organic sparkling probiotic tea, and it is USDA approved as organic. It has 30 calories, only 10% of your added sugar for the day, and is vegan, kosher, raw, gluten-free, non-alcoholic, and verified non-GMO. Let's get into the kombucha. It comes in a can, so you guys are going to get that ASMR instead of the bottle opening ASMR. So here we go. Oh! Oh my God. That is the sound of the kombucha spilling all over me and all over my floor. So that is a very, very fun time. I'm going to be walking around smelling like raw kombucha. We love to see it. Ew, it does not smell good. I am not going to lie. I believe it was around $1.99 or $2.99 at grocery outlet. Now that I poured it into another jar, it doesn't smell that bad. Okay, wait, hold on. Let me taste it again. Okay, it's not like my favorite, but it also doesn't have like that super pungent kombucha taste that most kombuchas have. It kind of tastes like a healthier soda. Yeah, so anyway, if you guys want to check that out, it is by the Better Booch brand, and I found them at grocery outlet. Let's get into my very first interview ever with Jenna, and I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Hi! Jenna is a anti-oppression activist, an anti-capitalist, an anti-fascist, and an overall amazing person. She loves the sun. She loves gardening, collecting crystals, and baking and cooking. She is also a Jewish vegan and has been vegan for 4 years now. She is a former anonymous for the Voiceless organizer. You can find her Instagram, jennaearth, and her Twitter at jenna-earthling, jennaearthling. Let's get to the interview. Hi, Jenna. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yes, you're my first guest. I'm very, very happy that it's you because I am super nervous with anyone else. So I'm happy that my first guest gets to be you because I'm like, oh no, I don't know what I'm doing.
I feel so honored. Oh my gosh.
Okay, so I decided that the very first thing I'm going to do whenever I have a guest on my show is ask them what their zodiac sign is. So what is your zodiac sign, Jenna?
I am an Aquarius. A little bit weird, a little bit for my community. We love to see it.
You know, like honestly, Aquariuses are my third favorite sign out of 12, so that's not bad.
That is not bad. That's pretty good odds.
Goes Taurus, Scorpio, Aquarius. So of course I put myself first though.
I am a Scorpio rising too, so.
Shut up, dude. Are you really?
I really am. 2 out of 3.
We love it. That's why I love you so much. Okay, so just to kind of get started before we get into all that heavy other shit, what is your vegan story and like how did you go vegan? How long have you been vegan? That kind of stuff.
So looking back, I think I had kind of some foreshadowing as a child going to the grocery store and just like learning where different animal products came from when I knew, like, for example, I grew up not drinking milk. I knew it came from a cow. I knew it was taken away from the babies. I like made that connection and was very aware of that and avoided milk. Then when I learned what veal was and where that came from at 6 years old, I like boycotted it from then on. But then there was a lot of within the schools brainwashing and everything. And over time, I kind of feel like my compassion was lost from me.
Yeah.
When I was in high school, I had a friend who had a vegan friend who she introduced me to. And at that point, I was very much so in the mindset of like, why would you be vegan? That's kind of weird. It doesn't really make any sense to me. I buy humane and organic. I was one of those.
Yeah.
And on my own, I kind of was just like, it was bugging me that I didn't know why. Like I like didn't know why someone would go vegan. So it prompted me to do research. And for about 5 months, I just was like looking up, what do people eat when they're vegan? Why would somebody go vegan? What happens to the animals? What animal agriculture does to the environment? And over those 5 months, I had made the choice to lessen my use of animal products. And then at the end, I just didn't want to do it anymore. So then over a few weeks, I kind of cut things out to have my parents get used to me not eating animal products. From there, within the next year, I started finding out what animal rights was. And I found groups that were not super close to me, but at least in my state. And I started doing animal rights activism from there. And in November, I hit my 4-year vegan anniversary.
Oh, yay. How like has vegan changed like your perspective on like your own personal identity like as a person? Like do you think veganism really shaped any part of your personality or like how you interact? Or I know everybody always says like veganism, you make it your personality. So how do you feel like that shaped your personality or identity?
Well, first off, I've started photosynthesizing. I'm just
You're gonna have to teach me how to do that. I haven't got that vegan power yet.
It's so cheap. I don't buy any food. The $36 vegan chili.
Yes, iconic, classic, timeless.
So actually, it completely changed me. So I was are we allowed to curse on the podcast?
Yes, curse
Okay.
away.
I was a little shit in high school. Like, it's kind of a lot. I used to be conservative, which is very different from how I am now. And, my town, I lived in a conservative town, hunting and fishing. My congregation was very much so conservative, and they had conservative, like, congressmen come in. That's really all I knew. My close family members, almost all of them were conservative. And so I was just this very much like, I was climate change denier. I used a ton of single-use plastic. I ate a ton of meat, and I just didn't care about anything or anyone. I had the mentality of a conservative. It's about me, money. When I went vegan and started learning about animal rights, I was looking at Trump, who was the president at the time, 2016. And I was seeing these actions he was doing and these laws he was putting in place that were hurting the environment and the animals. Like there was one on like one area of the sea that is overfished, and he took the ban away so that way they could fish in that area. And learning about the fishing industry and how bad it is for the fish and the planet just like started questioning him, and then started questioning conservatives to the point where now I'm an anti-fascist, I'm a leftist. I want to tear down the entire government and the two-party system, like a complete 180. And I don't know if I would have gotten there without veganism opening my eyes up to compassion, because I have always valued compassion as a person. I was a very compassionate kid. It allowed me to see that I could take that back for myself.
Right. And you mentioned doing animal rights activists in Florida when you lived over there. How do you feel like your activism has changed, like your advocacy has changed from back when you were in Florida versus like who you are now living in like Portland and stuff? Like, do you think that your activism and how you spread veganism has changed a lot?
Oh yeah, for sure. I feel like like a lot of people who have been activists for a while or vegan for a while, is I was the angry vegan. And the people who I had to look up to were like these big activists who I'm sure we'll probably talk about in this podcast.
Yes.
And there's a lot to say. And PETA and just all these angry militant, which there's nothing wrong with being militant, but these angry white, mostly male vegans who spread their message in a way that's very single issue and kind of harms, not kind of, definitely harms a lot of other groups. And so I went from being a conservative while starting activism, seeing all of these people who are all probably conservatives, learning their ways of activism, to over time, I started broadening who I was listening to, that being marginalized groups of people within the vegan community, hearing what they had to say. And my activism has completely changed. Totally would not have imagined this.
Yeah, I think we all kind of start off as like an angry vegan. I definitely was. I remember just how like the way I would just come at people sometimes was just so out of pocket. And I don't think it really stemmed from hatred from them. I think it was more of hatred for the whole animal agriculture community, or I guess industry, and not being able to really like, you know, go up to the manager of Tyson or the CEO of Tyson and taking it out on him or them or her or whatever. I couldn't do that. So it was easier to take it out on like meat eaters and have like that just anger. And I think every vegan probably goes through a time period like that. So it's really interesting to look at how like things have changed over time for people's advocacy. And it's crazy when you really think about it. I remember you telling me something about you were working for Anonymous for the Voiceless too. And I kind of want to talk about that perspective because I know a lot of people still are really into AV. So I just kind of wanted to see your experience working for them and how that was for you.
Oh yeah, we're getting into some spicy territories. This one's gonna upset them.
You already knew. I'm like, yeah, we'll start out with your zodiac sign and then bam, why'd you stop working for AV, Jenna? Like,
Yeah, so I have a bit of history with a few different organizations, but mainly Anonymous for the Voiceless, also known as AV. I was a volunteer with them for about a year before I became an organizer, and then organized and volunteered for another year. I started up a chapter in my small conservative town, and I think the thing about AV that was very frustrating is they kind of put out like this, we're a family, we will help you, we have lots of money, we will for sure help you. I was a teenager at the time starting this. You know, I'm not making much money. I'm making pretty much minimum wage. And I had to basically fund my own chapter. If it weren't for the kindness of my friends who had some resources and them driving out to my small town, I would not have been able to hold cubes as long as I did. And I ended up having to, without the help from the higher ups, I had to close my chapter. And I started helping at a chapter that was about an hour away in a more populated city. And I was like a co-organizer, but I pretty much organized it, showed up there, handed out all the supplies, stayed there until it was done. I was very well versed in
so like
doing
what
organizing.
is like a organizer versus like someone who just participates in like a cube or something?
So what it looks like for an organizer is you have to be in the Facebook groups, but you have to know how to edit like the event itself, and you put the event up, and then you kind of have to invite people and try to see who you can get to go, and then you have to make sure you have enough people going. Then you have to keep people updated, whether you're like running late or if you're there. You have to make sure you have the supplies, which are like signs, masks, TV, iPads,
And
whatever it
all
may
of
be.
those are provided for you or donated,
No,
or how you pay for those yourself?
I got really lucky. My friend had 4 iPads from a school that her dad worked at, and it was like a private school, and those were old iPads, so she gifted them to me. But I had to buy the masks, which, by the way, are totally from an unethical place, and they have us all buy them because they're all from China. But yeah, yeah, I had to buy that. I know other chapters had crowdfunded like buying the TVs and the harnesses for the TVs and speakers, and mine was a very cheap chapter. I maybe spent about $50 to $100 on it within the 4 months I was there. I never got reimbursed. That was not something that a lot of organizers get. You spend your own money on it.
That's really interesting to me because I was just listening to Aya and Queer Brown Vegan on their live, and they were saying that vegan organizations get like the most funding out of like any organizations. So it's
Yep.
really weird to me how someone would ever have to pay for their own supplies for their own cube. I can understand like volunteering, you know, like your time to like do those like Facebook stuff, and like I can understand that to an extent, but I cannot understand having to pay with your own money for an organization that gets so much money, like from what I have seen. So
Yeah.
that's really actually bizarre, and I did not know that, and that makes me even more angry. So what do you think was like the biggest reasons that you left them?
As a lot of people know, a lot of people don't know though, I started seeing some not so great things come out from AV, from the head of AV, like whether it was Paul and Asal or team leaders, like social media managers. I saw transphobic things. There was a lot of talk about, in quotes, if you're coming to a cube, we don't have to address you by your pronouns because all we need to know is your name. And that was the first thing I saw. I thought that was entirely disrespectful. I have trans friends, non-binary friends, and that really bothered me. Volunteers and the organizers are the reason these things run. They deserve the utmost respect.
Right.
It takes nothing to address someone from the pronouns that they identify with.
This is something that team leaders would say. And what is also a team leader versus an organizer?
You have the volunteers, and then you have the organizers, and then you have the regional organizers, which are the people that would be above the organizers in each. So in the United States, we had one for the East Coast, and then I think there's one for the West Coast. Okay. And they kind of just deal with any problems that come up or like any questions that you have. And at some point I got put in a chat with Paul and Asal and the regional organizer, which I gladly left them a quitting message before I left.
Yeah, I've seen Paul and Asal, and that's a whole nother topic. But that's really interesting to me also, that it would even be such a big deal just to like do like the bare minimum of respecting someone's pronouns. Like I just feel like that is like the bare minimum, and why it would be even a big deal is really bizarre to me.
It got worse.
What else happened? Give me the thesis.
I started acquiring a list because I was like, okay, this isn't cool. So it was that. And then after that, there were a few women within the movement, particularly within AV, that were coming forward with their situations, with their experiences with sexual assault, sexual abuse, sexual harassment within the community, and coming forward about like sharing their experiences with organizers that were sexually harassing and assaulting them. Paul and Asal's response to that was completely disrespectful, unattentive. They dismissed it and basically were like, unless you can get evidence and bring it to a court and prove it, we're not going to do anything about this organizer. And it was a few women that came forward about him. That was appalling to me. And I think that there might have been a few more things, but that was the last straw. I had started posting about AV even while I was still with them, because I had friends that were organizers as well and volunteers in Florida, and I didn't want to lose that sense of community. Yeah. And I thought that they would be understanding of that. I'm very vocal when I see like wrongdoing, and so I quit. I sent them a message. The regional organizer was very dismissive. She was like, that's not what Paul and Asal stand for. And I'm like, this is said quote from Paul and Asal. This came from their mouths. They did not own up to it at all. Then after I left, I started really posting about AV. And there was, am I allowed to name drop? Is that okay?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, cool. So I've been sitting on this for way over a year, but
yeah, I know we've been talking about doing this actual episode for a while now, and I can't think of a more perfect time than this moment.
Perfect time.
So anything you have to say, just air it out in your beautiful little soul, whatever you have to say. This is a safe place. Say what you have to say, and everybody's going to be supportive for you, I promise. So go ahead.
Okay, sweet. So yeah, this happened probably over a year ago well over a year ago when I left. He's like a middle-aged man named Juan. who was one of the organizers for AV Miami. I was very supportive of his cubes. He started organizing after I did. I attended almost every single one of his cubes, helped him set up. I'd get there early. I'd carry all the heavy TVs from his car and walk a few blocks with him.
They're so tiny.
They're heavy.
Yeah,
They're
I'm like,
so
what?
heavy. Both on my shoulder, walking, like hobbling like this. But we knew each other. We did activism all together, all the time together. After I started posting on Instagram, he sent me a very nasty DM calling me a horrible activist. I'm betraying the animals. Why am I doing this? I'm betraying the community. And to me, it just didn't make any sense because we have the materials that were self-funded. We have each other. Why do we need AV? We could do our own thing. We literally don't need AV. I do not stand for what they represent. Morally, I cannot stand with that as someone who is preaching anti-oppression. I literally cannot stand for them. He was just really nasty to me. It got worse. In the group chat with me and about 10 other organizers who were all my friends, they were like my second family. He decided that it was okay to put me on blast in the group chat and just call me out. And we went back and forth. And I'm very hard-headed. If you come across me the wrong way purposefully, I do not hold back. I will serve you your ass. I don't care. I'll put it on a platter for you and season it. No, but like I came back at him and I was so appalled that besides one person who I still very much so love and appreciate, besides one person in that chat, nobody said a word. Nobody stood up for me. No one stood by my side. Everyone just let that happen. And everyone read it and like kept texting things and like moving past that. And I'm just like, this is like a 40-year-old man. I am literally like 19 years old. What the fuck?
What was some of the things that he was saying in this group chat, if you don't mind sharing that?
I think my brain has blocked a lot of it out, and I deleted most of it after I like moved away from Florida because I did not want to keep that energy. But it was a lot of the same, like, you're betraying the community. I don't know why you would want to do this. You're hurting us. You're being selfish. Oh, and then of course commenting on my age, like, you know, you're young, maybe you'll learn, maybe you'll grow up.
All because you were standing with sexual assault victims and respecting pronouns, and you are just being an overall decent person. He thinks that when you grow up, you're going to turn into a piece of shit like him. So that's interesting. No, that's not how that works. We usually get better as people, not worse. So that's actually terrible. I'm really sorry. And the fact that your brain even had to block things out tells me a lot, and it should tell a lot of people that. And the fact that those things aren't taken seriously, especially higher up, and there's no protection for you in those situations, I think that that's very telling of the organization as a whole. And this definitely needs to be said to protect, you know, other people and other, especially minors that are going to be going into these cubes and spaces. And when you have like that family dynamic, I know I've been talking to a lot of activists that have been saying, you know, that worked with like DXE and like AV, and like, you know, they treat you like a family and we're all together. And then the second something happens to you, it's usually sexual assault. It's usually some kind of transphobic, homophobic, racist act. Everybody turns against you. And I just think that that's such a common thing, and it's not protected, and it's so wrong. And I'm so sorry that you had to experience that.
Thanks. I really appreciate that. It's exactly what you said. That's right on the mark.
Is there anything else you want to share about AV, or we can totally leave them behind? Or if there's something left on your tongue that you would love to say about them, go ahead.
Just to add on to Juan's character, I suppose, when Alex Bez was getting called out, which, sidetrack for just a second, when men get called out for sexual assault anywhere, but also in the vegan movement, they love calling it a witch hunt. And it's like, no. A witch hunt? You mean when men called women witches for literally no reason and then murdered them?
Right.
You don't get to turn that on us. On Facebook, when Alex Bez was getting called out and Alex Bez was denying it.
By the way, sorry.
Amazing Vegan Outreach, who Juan actually worked with Alex when he came to Miami, and I did go to that seminar. I was on Alex Bez's post defending the woman who came forward and calling out his behavior and calling out like rape apologists in the chat. And Juan took it upon himself to fight with me in that comment section. And just like, again, it was more of the same, like saying really nasty things to me, acting like I don't know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, okay, so I know what you stand for now. Anyways, his name is Juan. He lives in the Miami area. That's it. That's that.
Watch out, ladies. And
Stay far away from him.
yes, definitely. Thank you for sharing that. That is just disgusting. And I'm not surprised, but I am appalled and I'm upset. And if I ever see him, it's on sight. But I wanted to transition into talking about, you being Jewish, you being a vegan that's also Jewish. And right now in the community, we are seeing a lot of debate about Jewish vegans and the Holocaust comparison, and people kind of being dismissive of your guys' perspective. And I think that's very odd considering you guys are the direct victims of this kind of call out in words. So I wanted to kind of transition into you and kind of discuss your Jewish heritage, things that are important to you about being Jewish, whatever you want to talk about. You have the floor. Go ahead.
Okay, cool. So I guess a little background on my Jewish heritage. My entire family is Jewish. I'm 100% European Ashkenazi Jew.
Mm-hmm.
I do have Holocaust victims and survivors in my family tree. It definitely hits very close to home to me. Have been at the receiving end of a lot of anti-Semitism, especially in school. I'm very familiar with what anti-Semitism looks like and what it feels like. And, I grew up going to Chabad. I was there like every single week for services. I was at all of the holidays. I went to Hebrew school. I had a bat mitzvah. Very familiar with that community. I love my Jewish heritage. It took me very long to get to this place, and I'm still working on it and learning more and more. But it is something I'm really proud of. I'm like 2% of the United States population and even less for the world. I think that that's really cool.
Yeah.
That's, I guess, a little bit of my background being Jewish.
So do you think that veganism kind of aligns at all with like Jewish beliefs or anything like that? Do you think that there's like a correlation that more Jewish people could kind of connect to with their heritage and beliefs that would kind of align with veganism?
I think it totally does. Mainly just because like we know what it's like to be the outcast, to be ignored and not listened to. What I learned growing up in Chabad was like a lot of just preaching about being kind to others and, doing what you can to be kind. Even though I don't align with this part, I do think it ties into my current beliefs, which is a lot of Jewish people follow a kosher diet.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was learning about that in Hebrew school, what stuck out to me was we were told, which I don't believe this to be true now, but we were told that animals were slaughtered the humane way. We try to do everything as kind as we can. Obviously, now I don't believe that I need to eat animals to survive, so I avoid that. But I think that the lesson is still there. If I
Mm-hmm.
can choose a kinder way, I will. And I think that that is something that can align. So if I don't have to eat animals, the most humane way to treat an animal is to leave them alone.
Right. What's it like to be Jewish in the vegan community, especially in America? Because that is such a unique perspective. And since you guys, like you said, are only about 2% of the population, I think that your perspective is super rare. And so I definitely want to know what that's like.
So, in general, being a Jewish in America is very scary. It's not fun to have kind of a target on your head, and adding being vegan on top of it only puts more of a target. No one really likes listening to vegans.
Right.
But it's pretty scary because, we have a lot of neo-Nazis walking around the United States, a lot of people that I would consider to be part of the KKK or white supremacists. And white supremacists, just like they don't like Black people, gay people, disabled people, they hate Jewish people.
Right. Yeah.
There's lots of anti-Semitic attacks on Hanukkah. There was an anti-Semitic attack almost every single night. At the Capitol riots, there were vegans there and non-vegans alike, and there were people wearing like Camp Auschwitz sweaters. And there's people that will stand outside of synagogues yelling 6 million more. So there's only 6 million Jews in the United States. 6 million Jews were murdered in the Holocaust. So that is very frightening because that would be every single Jewish person in the United States.
Right.
You go vegan, you think everybody is going to be kind and understanding of different oppressions, but you have these huge white vegan male activists who don't care to listen to any marginalized groups within the community about what it is like existing as a part of that marginalized group. And so they tokenize lots of different people's oppressions to use it for their own activism. And so when you're already a person who is ignored by the mainstream public and you add in the oppression of the animals and someone who's really passionate about that, it just feels like you are being ignored by every single person you could be.
I'm interested to know, like, how do you think the Jewish community that's not vegan views vegans as a whole?
This is a whole ass hot take. So I actually posted in a Jewish group today a DM I got from a animal rights activist in Florida. I sent you that DM earlier.
Yes.
He was really condescending and just telling me, like, there was so many like falsities within his statement about, like, I went vegan because Gary Yourofsky compared it to a Holocaust on live TV 10 years ago, and it turned most of Israel vegan. I'm sorry, actually only about maybe 10% of Israel's population is vegan. So that's not most. It's a very small percentage of the population. And regardless, I found out about veganism through Ellen Fisher, and her and her husband are conservatives, and I don't watch them anymore, and I don't like them. They're still part of my vegan journey, but I don't tell people to go watch their stuff anymore. So Gary Yourofsky, I used to watch him too. I think he's an awful person, and I don't promote him at all. Long story short, I posted his DM in this Jewish group. There were a few Jewish vegans in there, but not many. And the response that I've seen for this particular instance was that they, like, in their words, this guy's a moron. This is disrespectful. This is ignorant. This is insensitive. And then if I look at my own situation, watching these white male vegans tell me how I should do my activism when I first started, I pushed away my entire, congregation of people that maybe I could have helped on the path to go vegan, because I was so adamant about using these words that were so unnecessary to use that trigger a lot of hurt in people. And then the last example I'll draw is, do you know the holiday Kappuros?
I'm not super educated, but I know, like, the bare minimum of it.
I'll, like, just really simply explain it, but it's one of the many Jewish holidays, and it's about the atonement of our sins. And I think in Judaism, as a lot of other cultures do, there's very traditional cultural things that are done that are symbolic. And so one thing that Jewish people do is, not all Jews, but it is a common practice, is they'll take a chicken, swing them over their head, and move their sins to the chicken, and then they slaughter and eat the chickens. And not all Jewish people do it. Some people use money instead. And I actually never celebrated Kappuros, and I didn't even know what it was until I became vegan. But the way non-Jewish vegans handle protesting this holiday pushes so many Jewish people away from veganism. And I think this year it hit me really hard when I started becoming more proud of my heritage again. But they go to these celebrations, they stand across the street from Jewish people, and they yell at them. This is with anybody, but in psychology, if you are standing face to face to someone, it feels confrontational, and that person is not going to listen to what you have to say. Add in the fact that you are speaking to a marginalized group who is consistently told that people want them to be murdered and killed. Why do you think they're going to listen to you? Because they're just going to think that you are there to cause them harm. And so they're not going to want to listen to you. And I've tried getting this message to some of these activists that are so bent on using the terms Holocaust and triggering Jewish people and not listening to Jewish people. You are not going to get them to go vegan. You are going to push them further away.
I don't know if I would call this a theory, but I think it's just something that I've been thinking about. If their goal is to have people go vegan and that's their whole thing, and they want to turn more people vegan, like, why do they feel so, like, attached to this word? Because I think I've been talking about this a lot on Twitter and a lot on Instagram. Like, animals do not care what words you use to describe their oppression. They just don't want to be oppressed. So animals don't give a fuck like what word you use. They just don't want to be killed. It's you that gives a fuck about it. And so to me, it's like, if I had the choice, do I trigger an entire group of people that I care about and I don't want to be oppressed? Do I trigger them by using these words, Or do I find other words that are just as impactful and just as powerful to describe what animals go through to make Jewish people happy? And I mean, it's not even just making them happy, it's just respecting their fucking like bare minimum request of not, triggering them with these words. I feel like it's like common sense. It's the most logical thing to do is to not use it if your goal is to also create vegans. Like, why would you further alienate Jewish people? That just like makes no sense. It feels like a white supremacy way of, I mean, it doesn't feel like it is. It's like a white supremacy way of advocating for veganism, that we're going to ignore oppressed people and we don't give a fuck about your opinion, and if you don't want to go vegan, fine. Like, and I saw James Askey, he was talking to someone in the comment section, and it was like about the Holocaust comparison thing, and it was someone that said and I'm paraphrasing, this isn't exactly what this person said or exactly what James said, but he was like, oh, the Holocaust comparison is what helped me go vegetarian. And I was like, James is all about saying if you are a meat eater, basically you're a Nazi, you are just like this terrible person, But because this person said that the Holocaust was the reason they did something and they're defending you, now all of a sudden you don't care about the fact that they're just vegetarian and not vegan. He didn't say, oh, well, you should be vegan. He just said, great, like, awesome, cool. Like, and like that blew my mind, because I'm like, if your goal is to create vegans and this person's telling you that they're only vegetarian, you would tear that person to fucking shreds normally, not me, but him. So I'm like, it's so crazy how they are so attached to these words that have nothing to do with their own identity. It's crazy to me. I feel like it's just this big ego thing. It's like they can't let it go because it's going to harm their little fucking fragile ass white ass ego. And it's so irritating to me, and it is so awful to think about the fact that people are going to continuously do this and scare Jewish people for no reason, like absolutely no reason, and it's awful. I think I kind of asked a version of this question, but how has the vegan community treated you as like Jewish? I kind of asked you how America has treated you, and especially like as being vegan and Jewish, but how has the vegan community specifically treated you in your Jewish heritage?
There is a lot of ignorance and lack of education within the community, which a huge part of that is the people that are up above and showing people, down here how we need to do activism. And because they're not advocating for being completely anti-oppression, there's a lot of people that don't know how to do that and don't think to research it themselves. When I talk about my Jewish heritage, like, or even show a video of, like, for example, on Hanukkah, I was showing a video of the menorah and then a TV show I was watching, and I got a DM. We talked it out, and they came to terms with how what they were saying was very anti-Semitic, but I had a DM that was like, oh, I love that show. Sidebar, what are your thoughts on Israel and Palestine? After just finding out that I'm Jewish. And like, that's a very common thing. Telling me I don't know what I'm talking about, or I don't have a place speaking on the Holocaust comparisons, which is like, excuse me? I am Jewish. I have Holocaust survivors and victims in my family. I am Jewish. Right. That's really it for me to be able to speak on that. You are not Jewish. There's a lot of silencing, ignoring. I will post some things about anti-Semitism, or even like within the vegan community, whether it's on my Instagram story or Twitter. And I have my close circle of people, you being one of them, and I'm super thankful for you being there. But there's only a few people that'll like retweet or put it on their story, or then share a post that I shared, but it never goes further than that. And there's never a decent amount of support and understanding. And I just wish that there would be more self-motivation with education. I've also been asked a lot, like, to give up my emotional labor and teach people, essentially, which that bothers me. I'm busy. I work full time. I do things that I want to do. I don't want to be spending 2 hours a day to educate a person.
Right. Definitely. And in these past few weeks, Jewish vegans have just definitely been the target. Especially last week, it just with all of this Holocaust comparison and James Aspie and that vegan couple and all these other vegan, like fully raw Christina, and all of this issues of all of them kind of supporting this Holocaust comparison with animals and just completely ignoring your guys' perspective. And I think you brought up a really good point about emotional labor. I have definitely been on the receiving end of, or I guess the giving end of giving emotional labor for free. And I think that that's something that I have an issue with doing. I just continuously give, like, I just like give and give and give. And it's like, okay, well, like I have 2 jobs, like I have 2 businesses, like I'm doing all this shit. And I'm like giving you guys my emotional labor just for you to shit on me at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to also know, like, how do you, I mean, I already know how you feel, but just for people who don't know you, how do you feel, or what does it invoke when you hear these Holocaust comparisons?
So I guess to bring it back to the activist I used to be, I, at the start of my activism journey, kind of gave people a Holocaust pass. You can't really do that. I don't believe that that's a thing that you can actually do, but I used to do it. I recently went through my tweets and deleted old tweets of me saying, no, I agree with the comparison. I think it's okay. And I think that that came from a place of really just being guilted and manipulated. These big activists, and I'm sure that you can relate because they do the same thing with the whole topic of slavery. But if you are against using that, they will put on you, you're betraying the animals, you're turning your back on them, you don't care, you're a fake activist. And
Right,
so
definitely.
that hit me hard. I saw that happening to other people, and I didn't want that to happen to me because I care about animals and don't want them to be going through what they're currently going through. So when I first became an activist, I feel like I totally turned my back on my people when it is so easy for me to do both. And
Right.
now I don't understand why other people can't do both as well, or do it all, because it takes nothing from you to not speak harmfully and hurt other people. Now it really upsets me seeing it. I think it always has, but now I'm vocal about it. It upsets me seeing those comparisons, and especially from non-Jewish people. I think that that is totally up to Jewish people. If we want to use that comparison or draw comparisons, we have every right to do that. But when you
Yeah.
are a non-Jewish person, you have no right to use that. If someone gives you a Holocaust pass, you can't take it because you are not Jewish. You cannot
Right.
use that comparison if you are not Jewish. And like I saw on James Aspie's Facebook, I went through there and screenshotted a few things and tweeted it, but he made a long post and was like, I've been researching this for years. I've made my decision. It was never his decision.
Right.
Like, James, that was never your decision to be able to take something that tokenizes a group of people's oppression to use for your own advantage. And I'm going to add something on there because I know it's going to hurt his ego. But when it comes to my best friend, Marika pointed this out to me, but she was saying there's something in common with pro-lifers and single issue white male vegan activists or animal rights activists in general, which is the thing you're advocating for cannot correct you. A fetus can't correct you, an animal can't correct you in your activism. It's easy to advocate for those things because they cannot correct you.
Right.
Once you have marginalized groups of people saying, can you not use that word? It really affects and triggers me and my people. No, 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 no. Now you are criticizing me, and I can't do that. I am doing this because, and I believe this, but most of the activists we have do this to make themselves feel better about themselves.
Yeah.
It's an ego thing. They're virtue signaling. It is so incredibly easy to advocate for someone or something that cannot correct you, but then you add in all these other things and they don't want to be corrected. They want to know
Yeah.
that they're doing what's right.
Definitely. Like, just like what I was saying earlier, I definitely think it's an ego thing. You
Totally.
can't let it go. You can't listen to any other perspective. And I was arguing with that vegan couple because I am not Jewish, obviously. So I feel like if I see anti-Semitic comments, I'm going to actively call it out. I'll argue against it all day long. I don't care how long it takes. Like,
We love to see it.
I'm like, I will put in the work. Like, this is my responsibility. Like, I will definitely take that. And they just completely stopped responding to me when I said that you're
Jesus.
not doing this for the animals. You were doing this for your own ego. Period. Because
Period.
if you were doing it for the animals can't correct you. They didn't tell you you have to use this Holocaust comparison. You're doing this for you. And after I said that, they just completely stopped responding. They started responding to other people other than me. And I was like, bitch, post up. Like, if you have something to say it to my face. But they just like completely stopped responding.
This triggered a memory. Can I add it?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So that vegan couple actually got me into activism because they were doing a tour, as you know, a rich white vegan would. And that's how I found out about activism in my state. So I went, I met them, they were pretty nice. But I realized something. They eventually followed me back, and I was posting a lot of different activism things. It was very convenient and specific when they would share my things. And actually, this was a common thing. But when I was, oh, this is going to get me a little bit heated. This was before I decided I'm not going to turn my back on my people anymore. But when I would make a video about a Jewish holiday and talk about my perspective, and that it's not like, for example, I made one on Kapros, I made one about Passover and about the usage of animals. I was totally used by several different vegan white animal rights activists, non-Jewish animal rights activists. I had gotten so many shares on those videos, even though I was doing other videos. And it felt like my words were being used against me. And I think you've talked about this before with tweets that you have made. They use it for their own purpose. And then they try to say, no, we support the Jewish community. No, you don't. And Natasha and Luca, that vegan couple, they were part of that. They shared my videos talking about, you know, Passover and how I don't like the usage of animals on that, because what they love to do and what all these big activists love to do is they love to cherry pick and find people. I think it's kind of a way that they can still be the white supremacists they are and hate on these marginalized groups under the guise of helping animals. And I don't like that.
I can definitely attest to that. I have been during my like angry activist phase, and I remember just holocaust like comparisons were just the norm. Like everybody used it. Like Gary Roski used it, James Aspie used it. It was just the animal holocaust everywhere in the animal rights community. I just remember just repeating these things that like I thought everybody knew, and I thought that this was okay. And it's like disgusting when I really think about that. And the same thing would happen to me, that I would feel like I was turning my back on other Black people when I would like, and I still feel like I will draw comparisons to my own personal oppression in animals, and I have every right to do that. But I started to see, like, as I would tweet about this, my own personal thoughts comparing the two, which I am in my right to do, but I would start to see white vegans that specifically would only use that use those tweets, and they would use those tweets to attack other Black people. And I was like, well, that's not why I tweeted that. But I didn't want to be like, oh, like this is about the animals. Like if I were to say anything, it'd be like, no, this is about animals. Like, why are you making it about yourselves? And I was like, is that selfish? And I had such an internalized, like, what am I doing? Like, is this right? Do I feel this? I love animals. I would do anything for them. But it's like, every time I feel like I'm arguing with someone that's Black, I feel like I'm turning my back on them by saying like, well, you're Black, you should know that like slavery is wrong, and like blah blah blah. I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, but I had been so hyped up to like that this was right, and it felt, and I knew it was wrong. So I definitely can relate to feeling like you're turning your back on the, you know, your own ancestors and your own people. Like it's a really weird feeling. And I'm definitely glad that I found a way to advocate for animals that I don't feel uncomfortable doing. And I feel like that feels really good. And I'm really glad that we were able to find that as well. And I hope that us sharing our perspectives here will also allow other people to not have to go through this huge realization, and just realize that you don't have to turn your back on your people and what you believe in your religion, in your culture, in order to be vegan and advocate for animals.
Yeah, I think that is super relatable. And as you were talking, it reminded me like when I was in that phase of like, Holocaust this, Holocaust that, I was also, you know, we're fed all of the oppressive things to be said in these comparisons. And I am so obviously disgusted now, but like I look back on myself like almost 2 years ago, and if I if I were speaking to Black people at a cube or like talking one-on-one with a Black person,
Mm-hmm.
I would to their face make a slavery comparison. And I now, like, being more educated and really trying my best to be, an ally to the Black community, I cannot imagine what that must have felt like because it just is like so disrespectful. And looking back at it, I was not at the time an ally to the Black community. I wasn't trying to be, but I thought I was by
Mm-hmm.
using that comparison. I thought it was for their best interest. And
Right.
no, that was manipulative. And I see that that's such a manipulative tactic. It's ignorant, it's disrespectful.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that I'm glad that we're at a point where we can share these experiences because I think talking to different marginalized groups, we all are finding similarities within the movement and we could maybe one day move past it.
Yeah. And I think that also just comes from not being around other marginalized people, especially like
Yeah.
maybe in your example, like the only way you kind of felt like you knew how to talk to Black people at that point was to make slavery comparisons. And I never really talked to Jewish people, but I can maybe say that maybe I would have done the same thing in that situation. And I think that it just comes from not branching out and like talking to other people of different cultures and perspectives. And I think that that's something that's really important. And I think maybe if James Aspie, talked to a Black person besides yelling at them on the streets about going vegan, like maybe if you sat down and actually had a conversation with someone, I still don't think he would change, but I think that it would help. At least
Yeah.
you would know. And a question that I want to ask also is what would you tell someone who's kind of stuck on using these comparisons? They are kind of like, I'm not going to change. This is what I'm going to continuously do. If you could speak to them, like, what would you say?
Probably say something like,
And you can be like rated R, like that's fine. If it's anger, if it's whatever, like that's totally fine. Like how would that make you feel? Like if they just straight up told you like I'm not gonna change and like fuck your perspective pretty much.
oh, well, yeah. I mean, because there's the productive answer or like trying to be, and then there's the fuck you answer.
Right.
Because it like honestly depends. Most of the people I've talked to have not been open to changing or listening. Most of
Hmm.
my DMs look and sound something like, I'm sorry your brain is so small, and I'm sorry you can't understand the simple concept of you can use other words. There are more words than this one word that you are continuing to use. Um, I mean, again, it's it's definitely an ego thing. It's like, why do you feel like you need to use this? What is this accomplishing? What do you see when you use this word? Who told you you have to use this word? I just
Mm.
really wish that these people could sit there and unravel this programming that's been put onto them by these people. But a lot of them won't change. A lot of them are white supremacists and they do animal rights activism to make themselves feel good about themselves.
Definitely.
So that's that.
You brought up kind of giving the Jewish card or Holocaust card away. And I think that that's something that I don't want to let go of. How do you feel about when other Jewish people kind of give, especially white people, but any non-Jewish person, how do you feel when they kind of give that Holocaust pass away to other people?
On one hand, I'm really frustrated, but on the other hand, there is understanding. I understand where that comes from because I was there. I have
Mm,
no idea what's going on in their personal life or on social media, but I know being a person that was there is I know at that time I felt like I had to, otherwise I was betraying the animals. These people
yeah.
might be new activists. And so I think a productive conversation or like trying to have a productive conversation with them is probably what I'm going to try to do, but it is also really frustrating and I feel like I don't owe them that time because I think
Mm,
that if you are Jewish, you can make the comparisons. You can draw that. But I'm going to get a little controversial here. It's kind of like pick me mentality
mm,
a little bit. Me
yeah.
giving that right to a non-Jewish white person to use the Holocaust comparison is kind of like, accept me into your community. I know you guys hate
Yeah.
Jewish people and literally don't care about my existence, but accept me. It's that wanting to be accepted so bad. Jewish people are not accepted in almost any community. So
Yeah.
to have a community that preaches compassion, I think that we are very easily like manipulated and formed into the version of people that non-Jewish activists want.
I think It's similar, obviously not the same, but it's similar to when Black people will kind of give, like, you can say the N-word, like, it's fine, like, I don't care, like, you're white, that's fine, say the N-word, it doesn't bother me. And it's like, you can't just give that word away. But I
Right.
understand being bullied like my entire life, especially about being Black and racism, all of that. And just, I never was one of those people that was like, I don't care if you say the N-word. That was never me. But I definitely understand that perspective. Just being bullied for being Black my whole life, I
Mhm.
wanted to be accepted, especially in vegan Twitter world. I was like, this is a community that like likes me and likes what I'm saying, and I'm getting all this traction on my tweets. And it's like, I want to be accepted. Like, this is the first time I've ever felt accepted in my entire life. And so
Yeah.
if I have to betray some people, if I have to just, I mean, it's sad, but it's like, I just want a little bit of like acceptance. And if somebody would just say like, hey, you don't have to do this, you don't have to give away part of how you feel in order to be accepted into the community, I feel like that would be so much stronger than saying, if you don't portray your own community, you're definitely not going to fit in here. And so I can relate to that.
Yeah.
In a sense, it's definitely not the same thing. I definitely think just seeing the word animal holocaust everywhere in the vegan space is must just be awful. And I saw this trend where people are like, I guess, doing that black and white photos. Have you seen that? Where they're like holding up a
I don't
sign
think
that
so.
says like, stop supporting like the animal holocaust or something.
I have
Yeah.
seen that. There was
Yeah.
one guy with his abs or whatever. I'm like, what are you
Yeah.
doing?
And I'm like, this is one, it's so cringe and it looks so stupid, and you're just doing it to be a piece of shit. Like, you're
Yeah.
not doing that for the animals. What fucking animal is on fucking Instagram scrolling through your Instagram? Like, that doesn't make sense. It's really hard. And I really hope that in the future we can find a way to phase these people out. But I definitely think it's going to take some time for sure.
Oh yeah, and I totally relate to a lot of what you were saying. I do really love when you know, kind of find, I guess, similarities and talk on your experience too, because I think it really brings a lot of light to a lot of the similarities of the struggles people are going through.
Mm-hmm.
Like specifically the bullying, just to I guess touch on what that looked like as a Jewish person in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And like I do somewhat feel kind of lucky. I'm not an Orthodox Jew, which is so awful, but the more, I guess, Jewish in quotes you look to society, the more people are outwardly hateful on you.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you are not wearing, I guess, the attire or having your hair like what an Orthodox Jew looks like, which is what society identifies a Jewish person to look like,
Mm-hmm.
um, that because Jewish people can look like anything. So if a white supremacist sees a Jewish person, they're gonna hate on them. But I think because I guess I basically, let me just get into it. All throughout school, there was a lot of bullying, a lot of Holocaust remarks, even like beginning in elementary school. In middle school and high school, when we learned about the Holocaust by multiple teachers, the teacher looked me dead in the eyes and was like, Hitler wouldn't kill you because you have light hair and light eyes.
Yeah,
And
I
I had
saw that on
to
your TikTok. I was like, what?
Yeah, I had to sit there and explain to this teacher that I am Jewish and I actually would have been killed and I had ancestors that were killed in that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I had to sit there while the rest of the class thought that was hilarious and started laughing. I had in high school a kid behind me start throwing pennies at me. And I ended up getting in trouble for getting too loud in class instead of him for
Mm-hmm.
throwing pennies at me. When I was a young teenager, I would play Minecraft on Xbox and I would get on to these chat rooms with these teenage boys. And the second they found out I was Jewish, the immediate comment was, oh, let's throw you in an oven, let's put you in a gas chamber, like really disgusting, awful things. Comments about my appearance, my nose. Even recently, I actually lost two friends in my circle who were both vegan and even marching with like Black Lives Matter and like basically calling themselves intersectional activists or like trying to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one night I was talking about anti-Semitism, particularly with Shane Dawson. It was that whole thing. And I was trying to bring up like this man literally dressed up as Hitler for a skit and Nazis,
Mm-hmm.
and no one was like really calling it out. And so I was explaining anti-Semitism, how it literally brought me to a point that I almost didn't come back from as like a 11, 12-year-old. And 5 minutes later, one of the ex-friends made a joke. We were talking about how we don't really like Thanksgiving, and how my first vegan Thanksgiving, my mom wanted a turkey, and she said, let's just throw your mom in the oven. I tried to explain to her that that is not okay and not even a joke or comedy. And for a while she was like, well, you know,
Are these
not everyone
people
understands.
white? Are they
I
like,
think that she was Latinx and I think the guy was white, but
okay.
she didn't get it and was like fighting back really hard. Like, you can't, a lot of people are really offended when you're like, I really wouldn't have cared. I really would have been able to move past if I was like, that was like kind of anti-Semitic. I am so sorry. I was not aware that that wasn't even a joke, but that was really awful. I'll make sure I don't say that again.
Right.
Couldn't move past it. It was a week of my friend talking to her and trying to like work it out, figure it out, and she just didn't come to that conclusion. Her apologies she was giving me were very fake and forced. So moved past her, and then the guy was not really willing to listen about what happened with her. We were all friends. Around 4th of July, he made a joke about how he's like a firework Nazi, all in the same week. And I was like, okay, you're done too. It's just frustrating. It's within the vegan movement. And my friend had texted him and was like, that joke was anti-Semitic. That was wrong. I wasn't around to hear that, but they were. And he was like, you've known me for like 3 years, we've shared a space, and the first thing you do is call me anti-Semitic. It was a whole thing. A lot of people are just not willing to listen, but it's like, this shit is serious. And when you're a child hearing this stuff, when you're just trying to be proud of your heritage, it can potentially be life-threatening, and it almost was for me. And I'm just glad I was able to come back from that point, because it's something I'm really proud of, and I love that about myself.
When people get called out for being racist and just overall a piece of shit, when they when they turn their apology and they're addressing the situation as like this big like victim mentality situation, I'm like, okay, so you didn't like learn anything. Like, you didn't learn anything from this situation. You made this about you when I was the victim, you know, like, you hurt me and the people that I care about and my ancestors. And all you need to do is just say, like, I apologize. I'll do better. I wasn't aware. I'm ignorant. I'm sorry, you know? And it's something so simple, but people's egos just don't allow them to just be decent fucking people. And I think that that's something that's really sad. But like, on a more happier note, I guess, I want to know like some vegan dishes that are, you know, that you've been able to recreate that are like Jewish traditional foods that you've been eating, because I know you were making I think it was bread, some type of bread one time on Instagram Live, and I was like, that looks so good. And so are there any dishes that you would recommend that people can maybe make that are Jewish? Because I would love to do that.
I was very excited about this question. I haven't
Yes,
made
I
a
love
ton
food.
yet. Me too. I love cooking and baking. Yeah, I was making, it's called challah bread. It's braided bread that is traditionally made with eggs. It's kind of like soft pretzel-y. It's a similar, I think it's like kind of a similar recipe or like style of like bread, I suppose. So it's very eggy. I grew up not eating gluten. So when I would be at Chabad and they would have challah, I would have to sneak it. And then when I went vegan, I started eating gluten, but obviously I can't get traditional challah because it's all made with eggs. So I've made it a few times. I've made it for a few different holidays in different shapes. And it is like, I've made it gluten-free even. It is such a good flaky bread. I haven't perfected my vegan recipe for it yet, but when I do, it probably will be up on my Instagram. So I've made that. I've made Israeli salad, which is really simple. It's literally just like, I think it's tomato, red onion, green bell pepper, and cucumber. And then you put like a little bit of olive oil and salt and pepper. And that was something that was always served at the table. Like Shabbos brunch, there would just be a whole table of like different foods, and that was one of them. I think the thing I'm most proud of that I've made was I made vegan bagel and lox. And lox is smoked salmon, but I've learned how to make it with carrots. And then I just use like Kite Hill cream cheese. That's my favorite one. And I put some red onions and tomato and capers on it. And that is like my favorite thing. There's like more things I want to make. Like I was looking up I'm not exactly sure how to describe it, but it's a dessert food. It's called babka.
Mm-hmm.
It's supposed to take really long to make and put together, but that I think I want to tackle. And I definitely want to tackle maybe like a vegan whitefish salad. And oh, these little cookies called rugelach cookies. I tried making them for a friend gluten-free and they did not come out right, but I want to try it again. They're really good. It's like a rolled cookie with like chocolate in it or like jams. It's chef's kiss. So good.
I can't wait to come to Portland also to come see you and Marika because I just know we're gonna make the most amazing food. And so I want that bread. I don't know why I think about it. I was just telling Kayla about this. I'm like, I think about that bread Jenna was making on Instagram all the time in a weird way. I want to try it so bad. Just as like a closing question, because I think that this is really important. What do you think the vegan community as a whole can do to be better allies to Jewish people? Not just Jewish people, like the entire population as a whole, but also Jewish vegans. What can non-Jewish people do in and out of the community in order to make this a safer place for Jewish people and just be a better ally? Because I think that's something that we all should work on for sure.
I think the first step is listening to the voices of Jewish people and Jewish vegans, hearing what they have to say. And if it conflicts with your own beliefs, sit with your beliefs and kind of figure out where they're coming from. It's really important to educate yourself, watch documentaries, watch films and movies, read books, follow Jewish people and Jewish vegans on social media. Don't ask them to do your research and give you a free emotional labor, because I will send you my Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App link. And I have done that before.
Perfect.
But educate yourself. After you educate yourself, when you hear or see someone being anti-Semitic, stand up for Jewish people, whether they're there or not. Fight anti-Semitism. Encourage other people in your circle to do that. If you see a Jewish person get ganged up against in real life, in the comments, online, stand by them, stand with them, and fight that anti-Semitism, because I so often just only see mostly Jewish people speaking up about anti-Semitism. We're 2% of the United States population and even less for the world. We can't fight our own oppression, just like any other marginalized group. Definitely. We need allies.
I think those are all really good things that we can do, and I hope people really listen to what you're saying and don't just gloss over that, because I think that that's one of the most important questions. What can we do to be better? And also you mentioned following more Jewish people, so I wanted to see if you knew any Jewish vegans that we should be following, or maybe just Jewish people in general that we should be following.
Perfect. I got a few Jewish vegans. 4 accounts are on Instagram and 1 is on TikTok. So the first one is Satanosaurus, like Satan. She's really, really cool. Love what they have to say. A lot of educational posts on anti-Semitism and a lot of stuff about veganism as well. The next account is Nicole.Kaufman, Nicole.Kofman. Same type of content, really love that. And then there's Melanie M. Roth, Melanie Mroth. Same as well. She's also, I believe, a vegan and Jewish. And then the next account, kind of like a general account, it's at Dear Non-Jews. I recently found their account. They made a post about when people say that they would punch a Nazi, which, by the way, again, James Aspie is walking free. Somebody punch this man. Anyways. And then on TikTok, I recently found her after I made that TikTok, but her @ is Sexy Scapegoat. I really love what she has to post. She is unapologetic with her activism for the Jewish community. Her bio says it all. It's like, once I discovered anti-Semitic TikToks, I only make Jewish TikToks now.
No, I love your TikTok, by the way, which I put in the intro of this podcast, because your TikTok is my favorite. And as soon as I open my TikTok, every single time you are the first person that pops up, and I'm like, hey, that's my beach. There was a I'm trying to found it. Okay, there is another Jewish vegan that I've been talking to, Roller Coaster Vegan, on Instagram, and I've been learning so much from them. They are posting like a lot of vegan food, but also they are Jewish, so I definitely recommend people follow them. Thank you for all of those recommendations. Thank you for being my very first interview. And I just want to say thank you for coming on here and doing this emotional labor for my podcast. And I hope people learn from you. And do you have anything else that you want to say before we end this?
Just thank you so much for having me. I am very, very honored and so excited that you allowed me to have the opportunity to share how I've been feeling. If anything, it doesn't really feel like emotional labor. It feels like a weight off my chest because these feelings have been sitting very heavy on me. And like I said before, having so many people not listen to you, it feels so good that I feel like Jewish people are starting to be given the mic a little bit. And I really appreciate you allowing me to step on your platform to do that. I'm so grateful.
I appreciate you for coming. And also, what is your Venmo and Cash App for people who want to support you financially? Because that is important. And you guys should be giving $1, $5, $10, $20, $100 to Jenna. And so what is that? So people can donate to you.
Stop, that would be so cool. My birthday's in like a few weeks, and all I want to get are the Avatar The Last Airbender comics, and they're so expensive. So that would be great. I believe my Venmo and my Cash App are the same as my Instagram handle, so jenna-earth. But if you can't find it, DM me on Instagram, and I'll gladly give it to you.
Okay, well, perfect. Thank you so much for coming on, and I appreciate it, and I hope you have a good rest of your night.
Thanks, you too. I'll talk to you later, Tyra.
Okay, bye.
Bye, thanks.